We were talking earlier, there were so many.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, AJ, thank you for pressing record.
Yes, that would have been unfortunate.
Sorry about earlier. I don't know. I can't.
No, you don't need to
control the
apologize.
computer.
You don't need to apologize at all. We are all here together to support one another.
Cool.
And so I see folks are slowly hopping on. Maybe agency staff, before we ask these questions, would love for you to introduce yourselves and then start asking some questions. And AJ and I are here to support you. And I think I might, do we need to unmute you, Chen and Sarah?
I was able to unmute myself this time.
Perfect.
So I guess I've already introduced myself. My name is Chen. I work for CDFW's MPA Management Project. I'm an environmental scientist. I've worked for the project for 2 years, so I'm fairly new. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I attend Monterey collaborative meetings, which I introduced the collaborative network earlier. So I am somewhat familiar with Central Coast issues. Appreciate you guys all joining this meeting and taking time out of your evening tonight. Thanks.
And hi, everyone. My name's Sandy Fogg, and I am a California Sea Grant State Fellow. I'm with the Ocean Protection Council in the Marine Protected Areas and Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Marine Ecosystems programs. And I have been living in Santa Cruz and working at OPC since January.
Thanks, Sandy. Tammy, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Tammy Heitzreiter. I also work with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I am more in on the permitting department for the Marine Coast.
Thanks, Tammy. Right. Oh, do we have any other agency staff on? Okay, so would love, so go ahead, Chen. Do you want to ask this group some questions, maybe starting with the first one here?
Sure. We'll start out with the first question. How would you define, measure, and/or assess progress towards the Marine Life Protection Act goals? So this is a question that our team is trying to answer with the Decadal Management Review report, and we'd like to hear from all of you and what your perspectives are.
What are the goals? Are they the 4 pillars that you talked about?
No, there are 5 goals in the Marine Life Protection Act, and you can look those up, but they're mainly goals.
I have them here, Chen,
okay.
as that's helpful.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
Yes.
So they're very broad, and Darren, I see you. We will have you speak next. They're very broad, and so that's why, I mean, it doesn't say, 50 fish in an area. It says protect natural, all of these things.
I appreciate. I wasn't clear on what, because the initial question is even more broad. So having some specificity in what the goals are, because that's important. So thank you.
Yeah. And so, what does success look like? Darren, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, happy to share. Thanks for having me, ladies and gentlemen. Success to me looks like facts and evidence. When I read over those pillars and bullet points, it mentioned enhancing recreation, education, and research activities. I'm a Santa Cruz Port Commissioner, and I know for a fact that there's been 0 enhancement of recreation or educational activities. I
100%.
Personally don't know about the scientific and research activities. I know that I do not see any researchers or scientists in our region. I don't subscribe to all the science journals, so I'm not really sure what that happens or if it's happening or if it's waiting. But to me, if we're measuring success by achieving the goals that we set out for ourselves, those are a whole bunch of goals that have yet to be achieved.
And so when you say, concern that you have concerns about lack of recreational activities.
According to the prior slide, one of the goals and purposes of the MPA was to enhance recreation and educational activities. Mm-hmm. I'm a recreator and an educator here in Santa Cruz for a full-time job, and none of that's happened. we've seen 0% of it. We're 10 years in. It's alarming to me that a process this large and with this many impacts isn't providing results. Earlier in our evening's discussion, somebody said, hey, are you guys going to be sharing any data? And the participants that are skipping dinner with their family right now all heard, oh, we don't have the data to share right now. That's what we've been waiting for. 10 years ago, we were told this was science driven. Please, please, please share it with us. There's what, like 15 of us in this room that are taking this time to listen and learn and share. I'm just concerned that this process, during my past experiences, this process has worked, started looking pretty good, been on the tracks, been on the trails. And then a couple weeks down the road, I'm worried that we'll get an email saying that the subsequent sessions have been postponed and we're reworking our approach and our process.
Thanks, Darren. So just to say out loud,
Yes.
if we can send you the links to the baseline information. That is all available online. The new information, as you say, is not ready yet. It hasn't even been delivered to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. That will happen in December. And so I believe, Chen, is it true that will be made publicly available when it is available, and it hasn't been received yet?
The technical long-term monitoring reports will be publicly available. They'll, of course, first be delivered to CDFW, and we'll have a chance to review and provide comments to the researchers. And then once there is some review and revision of those reports, they will go public. And thank you, Darren, for your comments. I've noted that you're interested in hearing about facts and evidence and science, and that will be coming from our research and monitoring pillar. And you're also interested in hearing about benefits to recreation and educational activities. And to me, that also means that we need to be better about communicating our outreach and education pillar. So thank you, Darren.
Thanks, Chen. So we have Ryan, and then Matt will get to you next.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ryan. Oh, you are on mute. Let me ask you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So you're asking about what you think would be a successful report based on those pillars. Touching back on what Darren said, I think we need to see the facts laid out, and they need to be laid out in a way that, again, like I mentioned in my comment before, that if you protected a more biodiverse area that is prone to things like fish breeding, things like that, that needs to be noted. You can't just say there's more fish here. Well, yeah, naturally there was more fish there, and I get protections can help population growth, but you can't compare that to an area that doesn't have the same biodiversity and same tendencies to harbor those fish. So I would like to see that. I would like to see, sorry if I'm like shivering, I'm outside and trying to not bother my wife. I would also like to see things taken into account for, when it comes to management. Management isn't just protection, it isn't just preservation. Conservation includes returning things later on back to sportsmen recreationally, as we've seen with terrestrial management, that has happened in a lot of areas and with a lot of species. So that is the way I would like to see things go. I do not think if we just look and say, hey, preservation worked, let's just do that. That's not success to me. That's trying to make things better with a fence. The last thing that I also mentioned was I would like to see things, taken to the word management, looking at these MPAs and allowing citizens to help through doing things like urchin culling, like they are with the, I think it's G2KR, or having people go out and actually hand harvest, because I know the whole smashing urchins thing gets weird, but there's no reason we can't go out and hand harvest. And even in some of these lesser protected areas, there is a mollusk and invertebrate take the no take on those, and that just makes no sense to me. And then you can't look at that and go, well, those didn't work as well. Maybe the citizens could have jumped in and helped. So I think citizen involved management is a way to go, and I think that's what we should be looking for.
And I think that plays well into this next question too, about citizens. The reason why we have this projected here so that you all can see that we are taking notes from what you say so that we can incorporate it, and the department will have all of these beautiful sentiments in one place. But citizens in the management.
Thanks, Ryan. I'd like to respond to your comment as well and say that those are really helpful, and just translating what you said back to what it means for me is that we need to focus on some of the environmental aspects of comparing marine protected areas with reference sites when we report on how populations are doing in marine protected areas. Also consider if they were just better
Don't mean to
habitat.
interrupt. He's talking about source and sink dynamics. So what he's talking about is that if you guys locked up a source early on, which was a far more biodiverse area that was a breeding zone or an aggregation zone, and then you're comparing it to a sink outside, which now you've concentrated more fishing effort on, you really got to be careful in your, what I would say, the way you're designing your comparisons and studies. There's a lot of academic papers on this when you look at the spillover effect. That's what he's talking about, I think, to really help put it in your language.
Matt, thank you for clarifying. We'll be getting all of the data from the scientists and what they report, but it's helpful to know that that's what you guys are really interested in. Source and sink dynamics and probably larval.
We're seeing the displacement.
Hold on, Matt, can you let Chen finish her sentence,
Sure.
please? Thank
Sorry.
you. That's okay.
Right, and larval connectivity probably relates to source and sink dynamics as well, if you're interested in that.
Yep.
Also, when you're talking about conservation and the need to give back to fishermen, I'm reading into that you're interested in spillover effects.
Yes.
And citizen engagement and management is kind of self-explanatory, but just citizen science opportunities.
Can I add just one more thing? I know I kind of got on a ramble there. That's exactly what I'm saying. And Matt is much smarter than me. We've talked before. He's one of my buddies. No, that guy's, he should be speaking, not me. But the one thing I did want to add is again, there was some references, and not just the baseline data and, the really heavy reading, but things along the lines of like a children's coloring book that I look at, and you guys want to push education, and I'm all for that, especially when it comes to conservation. I'm a huge conservationist, and I support education along those lines. However, when you show just a coloring book drawing of unprotected, slightly protected, fully protected, and it just shows a barren wasteland, and then in fully protected shows this utopian fish lifestyle, that to me, and I don't mean this in any offensive way, but just because I don't know what else to call it, comes off a little propagandish. And flipping through that book, there is nothing in there that would explain why, other than maybe these fish have a happier life in a protected area. And that's really dangerous to teach our children and to teach the people coming up into this sport, is that if we just left them alone, life would be green and a Disney movie, because that's not true. And we need to, sportsmen and sportswomen are huge parts of conservation and management. And I believe that we can't try to scare people away from that through incomplete education.
Thank you. And so we are capturing these things in the notes as you all are speaking. So just to say that out loud. Go ahead,
I would
Chen.
like to respond to that as well. I think the problem with that probably has arisen from the lack of participation by the fishing community in those marine protected area collaborative network groups. So that coloring book was created out of the Monterey Collaborative. And I attend those meetings, and I have to say there isn't a lot of fishing representation in that group, and they would welcome more representation by the fishing community. So as they were working on that group, if there was a recreational fisher on the group, they might have been able to contribute that perspective.
So if we can
hold on.
add to the notes, sorry, I just wanted to add to your notes because I love that and I totally understand, and that is part of my goal in my lifetime is to get more groups and more people. If we can just note that the backcountry hunters and anglers and Fin and Forage, both Fin and Forage is heavily based out of Monterey, and obviously backcountry hunters and anglers is huge, but I can get you that. If we just need to find a way to be aware, because I don't think either group, which is heavily involved in this, were aware that that was happening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love it. Matt, did you have some thoughts on what success looks like?
I did, and I apologize for speaking over the DFG counterpart. Very sorry. I think Ryan just brought up a huge point that I would like to talk about defining, measuring success is communication or public outreach. There is, I think, actually I looked, because when we're doing the same thing for 30 by 30, there's a lot of preparation, public outreach, non-governmental organizations and groups on the environmental non-consumptive side that are very, very organized. And so they have websites that talk about when the meetings are and all that type of stuff. There's nothing like that really for sports fishermen, let alone spear fishermen. How I found out about this meeting was Fin and Forage put it on Instagram. So I don't know how you get the word out, if you will, more effectively, but the 30 by 30, I know that's not your deal, but there's a lot of overlap. And then this decadal review, and then later on, and even like Miss Pope was talking about the fish and game meetings. Nobody knows about that stuff, how it works. There's no public forum. If you Google this thing, you'll never find it. It's a more part of my answer to that, how do I define success, is coherent and regular communication to all user groups. I think that's huge. I would echo, and I think what you're getting a little bit from Ryan, definitely from me and the gentleman who talked first, you're getting frustration from last time. I was involved, I was down in Santa Barbara then in the late 90s. I was the consumptive recreational representative for the community down there. And that process, and why I know about source sync and all that type of stuff, that process was skewed. And what I mean by skewed is large organizations like University of California, Santa Barbara, the Nature Conservancy, were funded by certain interests, and the science was science. But why do I know about source sync dynamics? A good friend who's a PhD ichthyologist, was at UCSB, now he's at Scripps, Mark Steele, could not speak at that meeting about his thoughts towards MPAs because he was concerned about losing his job at UCSB. And so he would send me to the library to look things up to be able to argue. So what you're probably feeling a little bit from all of us is a defensiveness and this idea of trust the science. Why we all want to see the science before it goes to the Fish and Game Commission is because we know that they're going to make decisions based off of the presentation. We want to feel like we can buy into that science, that it was equitably sourced, that it wasn't swayed by private money, particularly the Pew, Packard, Sun foundations, which fund a lot of NGOs, and there's a certain agenda there. And I think the overall question that I would like to have defined, do I measure progress, is the idea of what are we looking for? Are fish being looked at? Are the oceans being looked at as a natural resource for recreation, not consumptive and non-consumptive recreation? Or are they being looked at something that needs to be restored back to historical levels, which means no take at all? Because, and so I know that's a lot, but the overall point I would like you to put in notes is a transparent, well-communicated approach to science with community involvement.
Mhm.
Transparent, well-communicated approach to science, because we didn't feel that last time. I learned about the Delphi technique because of the meetings last time. And we're doing a little bit of that today with predetermined questions you want us to answer. But, you know, you've got a lot of people that are affected by this that don't even know what's going on. That's why there's no fishermen in those groups.
Thanks, Matt. Before we move on to the next question, just want to check in from those who we haven't heard from yet about how you would measure success or define success.
Sarah.
Please go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm also here because of that Instagram post from Fin and Forage, and also shout out to a Noob Spiro podcast and Fin and Forage podcast for the heads up on this meeting. I'm a spear fisherman and a recreational diver at Monterey County and also San Luis Obispo County. I really, really love and appreciate the ability to harvest from our ocean. The sustainability of the harvest is really important to me because the truth is that I'm a sightseer first and a hunter second. My daughters and I, that's our passion. That's what we do first on the weekends and on our free days is visit the ocean. And the community involvement in the ocean is really important to me, not just because I want to keep our oceans open for the rest of my fishing friends, but because I genuinely care about being a part of it. I'm both a part of the science and just a part of caring for the ocean. I feel the way that Matt does, in that a lot of this stuff is completely out of left field to me. And when I Google it here on my iPad, as it's been mentioned in the larger room with everybody else, a lot of it doesn't even come up, guys. You know, I wrote down a lot of the stuff that was recommended to me as ways to get involved as the community member, and that stuff doesn't even come up on the first 2 pages of Google. So I'm not really sure even where to go with my notes from earlier in our meeting. There isn't anywhere for us to go, which seems weird since I have to get a fishing license with ocean improvement and lobster cards and all these other things. You would think that I would have more access to the information that I need to be more involved in this kind of scientific information and gathering. I do want to be involved. I do care about it tremendously. And actually, Chen's was the best advice so far. I could find that right away. Chen, thank you for that network. There is one both for San Luis Obispo and for Monterey that I found really easily, and I'm definitely going to join those. So I appreciate that. But I would have only known about this meeting thanks to Fin and Forage and that post on Instagram. I appreciate that. And I do want to be involved, and we need a better way to find out about this stuff.
I'm glad that Fin and Forage forwarded the message. It's really, really great. And Sarah, I do want to hear from others as well. How would you like, I'm just trying to bring in some of these other questions as well. You say you'd like to be involved, and what role would you like to play, and others, you know, your peers as well, in the management of the MPA network moving forward?
The truth is, I would be happy to play any role that is needed. I would be happy to gather information or to participate in community outreach events that are needed. I would attend the community meetings also, both in Zoom or in person. I'm ready and willing to volunteer in whatever positions are open. I just honestly, like, I just haven't known about any of the stuff being available other than purchasing my tags and having my tags on me to avoid tickets, and knowing about where the MPAs are and in general what they're supposed to be doing. That's all I've ever known. So if there was a way to connect better with those programs, I would be happy to, you know, just to be put to work in any way that is necessary. You see a lot of ocean cleanup days by other local clubs, surfing clubs and that kind of, and dive clubs and stuff, but rarely officially stuff that really matters, which is stuff like our MPAs and that scientific information gathering and aggregating.
That's really helpful. And just to say, I mean, these are the things that are important for the department to hear, because that, as Chen had mentioned, that is, you know, a component of this review is, yes, you know, ecologically, what do they look like? But also too, this outreach and education. Chen, you know the pillars better than I do, but it's looking at all of the pillars, including the outreach and education component.
If I could just jump in for a second too, in terms of the MPA management program and outreach, and we recognize that the information is all scattered, and the state is currently within a process of creating a one landing page website with all the information that points to all the different sources, so that we can kind of centralize that information and all the news and research highlights and things like that to be disseminated. So that's an ongoing effort throughout multiple agencies, and we're going to be having a landing page where we're going to try to sync all that information together so that you don't have to go down a Google hole. So that's currently being targeted right now.
Thanks, Sandy. Keith, do you want to, let me ask you to unmute. Oh, you can unmute. Great.
Yeah, my name is Keith Rutzart. I'm the founder of the Giant Kelp Restoration Project in Monterey. And we have a project with cooperation with the commission to call an unlimited number of purple and red urchins outside of marine protected areas at Tankers Reef. And, you know, in the future, we would like to bring this kind of effort into the state marine conservation areas. But I think the principal problem is that everyone's waiting for this decadal review to be complete before they want to do anything inside the state marine conservation areas. But in the Central Coast, I need to correct, and is that we started in 2007 on the Central Coast. This is 15 years for us, and I know we want the stars to align and everybody be on the decadal review, but this timeline doesn't really work very well, because by the time you get your report out in December of next year, which has no recommendations for adaptive management, and then you'd have to consider what is adaptive management. And I think going in, we all thought we would get adaptive management all along, but I think what this has become is we go 10 years and then we think about adaptive management. And so a lot of these places we go to have all these problems where, you know, I'm a reef check surveyor and I've been surveying for over 10 years. And I can tell you, I can go out at places, I can put a 0 on my data sheet before I even go in the water, because there's no fish there anymore. So we're trying to save the state a lot of grief by doing it, by doing this project and advancing the state kelp restoration. And I think what's, you know, you asked me what is success? And to me is that if we can keep kelp alive and keep biodiversity alive on the Central Coast with the aid of marine protected areas, protecting these areas from their biodiversity and habitat loss. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
No, that's really great. Thank you, Keith. Melanie?
Hi, I would just like to echo what Keith said. I feel like the whole process is very unresponsive, and it kind of makes me think of if we had COVID show up and we decided, well, we weren't going to do anything about it until we had a decadal review. And you can imagine what that would be like. We have all these new emergencies that are coming up related probably to climate change. And there is no way within the current MPA process to deal with emergencies. It's all decadal review. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I think that that we need to find a way to rate within the MPA goals to enable responsiveness instead of waiting for so long. Since we're jumping around from question to question,
Please welcome it
I'd
all.
also like to talk about the role of the community playing. And I feel like we need to allow citizens to have a part in making sure that the MPAs stay protected and we maintain biodiversity. And I think that because it's underwater, that the Fish and Game Commission isn't willing to give citizens an opportunity to enable that restoration process. I do think that if I were working on land and there was a weed that needed to be pulled because it was invasive, that the response would be really quick. And in fact, many of my friends do work on land, but when it comes to working underwater, we are considered lower beings, and volunteers, even trained volunteer divers, are not allowed to help rid the ocean environment of invasive invertebrates, invasive seaweeds, and anything that would keep the marine protected areas from maintaining their biodiversity. We have to do that. Just because it's underwater doesn't mean it's not a problem. Thanks.
Thanks, Melanie. Any other thoughts on success? One of the questions, what does success look like for you? We also have the question of, what are the highest priority topics and issues? We've heard some of them already, maintaining biodiversity and kelp. But what are the highest priority topics and issues and sources of information that you would like to see in this review? Go ahead, Sarah.
Actually, what I just heard made me question something. In these MPAs where we are taking nothing and supposed to be changing nothing as divers, as visitors, perhaps that is to the good then if we aren't pulling these invasive species. That is just what we should be doing, is showing how our complete inaction in an area, both other than, I suppose, recreational diving, boating, kayaking, which I assume is all still hopefully legal in those areas. By us doing nothing there shows how, all these invasive species take over, harm our biodiversity that we love so much, that we appreciate, whereas if we continue to cull the urchins, to pull these invasive species out in the non-protected areas, then we show just how useful we are as citizens, as visiting these areas in the ocean that aren't protected, and hopefully will continue to allow access to places in the ocean. Maybe so by us leaving those unwanted creatures in those MPAs, I hope that it will show in the science and the numbers that they do need our help, right? That the ocean does need the help of citizen scientists, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to answer that. What are the highest priorities? But I didn't say anything on the community with the play. I would love to see that the Department of Fish and Game come in with, in certain areas, programs for restocking historically abundant species. One I can think of that would be easy are things like pismo clams and little neck clams. That would take, and that's something that the citizens can absolutely do. Same with abalone. Something that's kind of drove me crazy is in years where the water's warm and the abalone don't have a lot of food and there's big waves, we have tons and tons of abalones washing up on shore and dying. and game wardens are down there so people don't take them and eat them, which is a good thing. I would love to see individuals maybe licensed or something like that in some way, trained to get those abalone to some sort of holding facility and then have them repopulate into areas that are missing abalone, things like that. That's on how I would like to see the community play a role. The priority topics, I would really like to understand, and I said it before, the spillover effect. I'm very interested in seeing my son and daughter be able to fish recreationally. We have some of the most managed fisheries, I should say, in the world in California. They do a very good job with a lot of species. And a big theoretical benefit of marine reserves, particularly no-take marine reserves, is spillover, not just planktonic, which we're talking about, but also actually overabundance and then fish and crustaceans moving the other way. And one example I would love to see researched is the impact on potential lobster abundance, California spiny lobster, inside and outside of no-take marine reserves. I can tell you exactly where the boundaries are of any marine reserve at the Channel Islands, because there is a complete wall of lobster traps around it. And I have a anecdotal feeling that any sort of spillover that's happening with actual adult animals repopulating areas is getting sopped up by a reconcentration of fishing effort. So I would love to see some real detail of what has happened with the displacement and concentration, because this idea was there would be less fishing effort, and there isn't less fishing effort. There's more fishing effort in less robust areas. I will say, again, anecdotally, I've seen sheephead, California sheephead, calico bass, black sea bass, things like that, spill over considerably in places I've been diving for the last 30 years in Southern California. The lobster, we're not seeing it. So I'd love to see those sorts of very granular dynamics.
Thanks, Matt. And I know there was a project, and Chen, you would know more about this than I do, but there was a project during the baseline program with Lobster. Is there one for this new round of projects? Do you know?
I don't know if there are any projects focusing just on lobster, but we at the department are very interested in this question too about fishing and displacement and changes in spatial fishing effort. So we are trying to use SRF's, California Recreational Fisheries Survey data to see if we can glean anything from that that would be useful, as well as, you know, lobster report cards and things like that. So we're very interested in those same issues that you are, Matt, and trying to see if any departmental fishing data will shed light on that.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Chen. Do we have some voices that we haven't heard so far? I love that we're getting to all the questions without having to ask them all. They're all coming in organically, which is how it should be. But would love to hear from voices that we have. First, that we haven't heard from, and then if folks have additional thoughts, we have another 10 minutes or so. But yeah, what does success look like? What role would you like your community to play? What are the highest priority topics or sources of information you'd like to see in the review?
No one's going to speak. I'll answer the last one.
Perfect. Can I have Melanie go and then you, Matt? Perfect. Melanie and then Matt.
So one of my big priorities is to make sure that we take advantage of the newly passed bill AB 63 that allows restoration within marine protected areas. There are many areas that have been damaged in various ways, just like the oil spill damages marine protected areas invasive species and other potential uses can damage protected areas. We need to start restoring those areas that have been decimated by invasive plants and other problems. I am hoping that when you do the decadal review, that will be written in a very specific way, so that becomes just part of the whole process.
Thanks, Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, you have some other reflections and recommendations you'd like to share about
Yeah,
MPA
I was trying to
management?
answer all four.
I love it.
apologize for dominating the conversation. So on the any reflections, recommendations regarding MPA management, the role of the ocean community, and I think Melanie said it, and a couple of people have said it, and I did this like tongue-in-cheek anecdotal thing. So I spend sometimes 2 days a week, but like I've spent the last, my lifetime in the ocean watching different species of fish with a hunter's eye, very selective hunters seeing big stocks of fish. There is something that participants, non-scientific participants, and you had a gentleman speak earlier about the folks that are able to fish within the reserves. Whether it's Reef Watch or Reef Check is one of them, but there needs to be a more, there needs to be an easier process for credibility to be lent to people that are out there doing it. Commercial fishermen, recreational divers. There needs to be some sort of, and Dr. Milton Love, who wrote kind of the quintessential book on West Coast fish. My buddy Matt Lum is thanked in that book, and I was at Matt Lum's house when this happened. There was this idea that white sea bass at the time were completely extinct. They're gone. They've been decimated by the gillnet fishery, so on and so forth, where we had been spearfishing them that whole time. They've been definitely impacted. And Matt had video of thousands and thousands of mature white sea bass. And we had Dr. Milton Love in Matt's living room, look next to the screen like this going, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. This is crazy." And he said it changed everything. I would love, if you have someone as renowned as Dr. Milton Love, if you look at how much anecdotal evidence that guy uses to really get hands-on research that I think a lot of scientists and some of the methods we're using now don't have access to. I would love some framework or something to make it, because I know it can't just be, I saw this or I saw that, and then it doesn't have any weight. It needs to be true data, but some sort of framework to have a more consistent and regular input of non-directly scientific observations. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm putting here, would like to see more anecdotal information to inform the measurable data. Is
Yeah.
that?
Back and forth. The gentleman who spoke earlier about the he can go out and put a 0 on the card, and he is that stuff's huge. And I think that as you get more engagement through the organization that Chen talked about, from people that are out there seeing it, and we build credibility with that, I think that's a hugely impactful thing. There's a lot more eyes out there that we're not taking advantage of.
Thanks, Matt. So we have 2 more minutes.
Well, I might say something.
Please.
Go ahead.
I don't see myself. Am I there?
I see you.
I see
Hi,
you.
Richard.
Okay. How are you, Matt? It's good to see you. I'm just here as an observer, obviously, being the Fish and Game Commissioner who got this thing, one of the guys who got this done. After 17 years of policy making and in this area, been 11 years on the commission. What I wanted to say to you guys is that I'm really enthusiastic about what I'm seeing from you, Matt and Sarah. I mean, all you guys are, you're concerned, you're involved. And Matt, you were involved in this thing way back in the beginning.
I saw you I was thinking you looked familiar, buddy.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
It was you and Ugaritz, right?
Yeah. I'm the guy that the governor looked to me and grabbed my arm and once said to me, Richard, you get more death threats than I do. No, the point is you guys are involved. Don't forget that. That's what made the last one work at least as well as it did. And that's what's going to make this thing work going forward. The department is really critically interested in getting this right. It is absolutely true that ongoing management and the evolution of that management is the only way we're going to get this thing right. We put in, as you know, tens of thousands of man hours doing this. And this right now is how you get it as close to perfect as you can. So you guys are great. I am sitting back, not saying anything because it's not really my place to do so as one of the decision makers or past decision makers. It's just that I'm really glad to see you. Matt, good old face, you know, not that you're old. I'm the one who's 80. You're not. Okay.
I feel like
Here's the thing. Don't give this up, guys. If anything, double down on your involvement. It's excellent.
What advice do you have for us, Richard, in terms of avoiding some of the pitfalls that we had last time, I think, with infighting between the different groups and the doubt that I expressed today? I know we just had a couple minutes, but I think having you here is huge, man.
Well, thank you for asking that question. One of the things that's really kind of disheartening.
And I just want to say, I can't promise we're not going to get booted, but I told them to pause for just a minute. So
it is don't make sure that you're being informed. Make sure that you hold the department to making sure that it was appalling. I forget who it was who said this, could have been Sarah, who said she didn't know anything about this. She didn't even hear about this. That is not right.
Nobody knows.
The department needs to be doing an outreach program on getting this right, because having not a fisherman show up in the Monterey Bay Area is ridiculous, given what I personally experienced back there or up there last time. That's not right. So this needs to be done better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to say, there were over 200 people that RSVP'd, and the highest count we've had so far is 80.
Yeah, and that's my point to Matt. You got to lean in, you got to stay involved, you got to stay engaged, you got to show up. It takes a lot of work, but if your voice isn't heard, guess what doesn't happen?
That's exactly right. I sent my comment from 2001 to the young man who was talking about socioeconomics when I mapped the bus lines in Isla Vista against what they closed. So
you got it.
I'm still at it.
Yeah, you're still at it, is right. I don't know if you heard, but they reported that Santa Barbara, as a harbor, had the highest fishing gross of anybody in California.
Growing up there as a kid, right? I apologize but
well, and hold on, I did hear another voice that was trying to get through just a moment ago, a female voice. Was that
That
Melanie?
might have been me. I don't know. Or
nope.
Yeah, I saw Ryan. I saw your screen flash.
Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry, that was not a female voice.
And just because we're really short on time, I do want to touch back on what Matt said of using, non-scientific communities to help grow things. One of the things we all have on our heads now is a video camera that wasn't necessarily available 10 years ago.
No,
so I think, those things need to be taken into account. And then to touch on Richard, I believe it was, it's amazing having you here. And just for that push, I'm one of the board members in Fin and Forge, one of the founders. And just to hear people say they're here because I posted something makes me so happy. And I just want to do more of that. I want to bring more people here. So please, let's find ways to make the communication bigger, broader, and better so we can have everybody in here, because that is what's important, is making it special and everybody's, planet, everybody's area. That's what it is. So whatever we can do to help with that, I'm in. I know Matt's in. It's a big deal.
Thanks, Brian. So our breakout room is going to close in 54 seconds. I do want to flag, we've heard about, engagement, and I just want to flag that Chen put in the chat a couple of things. One, the MPA Collaborative Network, it's MPAcollaborative.org, is a great place to get information about what's happening with the MPAs, especially in your area, because they are region specific. and to email MPA management review at wildlife.ca.gov. I promise you there are real people, including Chen, who are reviewing that email address.
Please I would like you to email what other contacts there are to reach the fishing community other than Fin and Forage, now that I've heard about you guys now, but what are other groups that we might reach out to?
Okay.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and then CCA Cal.